All right, good evening. This is the Planning Board meeting of March 12th, 2019. It's at 7 o'clock, and this is being brought to you by Area 58 Community Access Media. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Stephen.
Mr. Chairman, we have before us our agenda, and given the nature of our correspondence with one of the applicants earlier, I'd like to recommend we take item 2, 157 North Main Street, out of order. We do have a request for a continuance from the applicant. Our next scheduled meeting, regular meeting, is March 26th at 7 o'clock.
All right, I'll make a motion to
Confirmed.
continue the hearing for 157 North Main Street to March 26th at 7 o'clock.
I'll second that.
So a motion and a second. If I could just ask Stephen, I remember talking to you this week, and you said that you were going to be out one meeting. Would this be the March 26th meeting, or is it further down the road?
No, sir, it would be the following meeting on April 9th.
Okay, April 9th, okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. All right, so the next one, we go on to public hearing continued, is on the application of Cranberry Point Energy Storage LLC requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 2230 of the Carver zoning bylaw. It's located at 31 Rear Main Street in Carver, Mass. Assessors map 6110-0-R and 7-0-R to allow a 150 megawatt battery storage facility in a residential agricultural district.
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. Could identify yourselves for the record, please?
Good evening. Richard M. Cirque, attorney for Sovereign.
Giovanni Bertolino, Vice President, NL Green Power North America.
Alex Frankel, developer, Sovereign Storage.
Gary Garfield, engineer, Sovereign Storage.
Thank you. Stephen, did you want to start this out, or do you have any comments to make?
Sure. The packet that I just handed out to the board contains the most recent information that we received. Excuse me. Last time we discussed, the cover sheet you have there is a copy from the Department of Energy Global Storage Database, Office of Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability. It has very little to do with this particular project, but it's been discussed at this board whether or not other energy storage systems exist in the United States. This map represents that these are the operating energy storage. There is a link there if anybody's interested in visiting the Department of Energy's website. Noting also that Mrs. Bogart made a comment or a query about the largest arrays. Many of these arrays or energy storage systems seemingly are larger than the 150 megawatts that's proposed here. However, Mr. Garfield mentioned last time we met that this would be among the largest lithium-ion battery storage systems in the world. So I wanted to clarify that point. There are larger storage systems. This, though, speaking specifically about the technology as a lithium-ion, would theoretically be the largest. There is one that's about 100 megawatts in Australia, as I'm recalling, but as it is, I think 150 is the largest that we've seen in operation. Behind that cover sheet is the updated complete plan set submitted to us late last week on the 7th, I think, or 8th by AECom. Behind that, you'll find the applicant's operations and maintenance plan. And then behind that, you'll see the most recent updated final memo from Fuss & O'Neill, dated March 8th, with very few comments, frankly.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just frame the discussion for tonight, if you'll allow me. Our goal tonight, if we're successful, would be, after hearing any further questions and responding as forthrightly as we can, to have the public hearing closed. And if that is the case, we would hope that the board would be able to vote then at your next meeting, which is February 26th. We've used the time between your last meeting and tonight, constructively, we've responded to all the questions that were put by Fuss and O'Neill, your peer review consultants, and we've responded to the questions that Ms. Bogart put to us at your last public hearing as forthrightly as we could. And so our purpose in having our team here at the table tonight is to answer any further questions that you may have. But we feel that we have made our presentation and we have responded to the questions of the peer review consultant as well as questions of the board. But if there are any others, and I'm sure there are, that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, thank you for that. At our last meeting, we did have, Jen did have some questions. They were some of Jen's questions and some were by other members too. And she noted that in her notes that she sent to Stephen and to me and to you people. I'm just going to quickly go through these, and if any of the board members have anything to add, if we could just do this quickly, and if they have anything to add, you can stop me and ask a question, okay? So one of the questions we had was the type of lighting. I know it was 15 or 20 feet, and it was a question if there was going to be a lighting plan, and I know in some of the business districts, when we have parking lots, we require lighting plans. This isn't a parking lot. The public isn't out here. I don't know if a lighting plan is necessary, but there was one thing that I was interested in, and we were talking about lights, and I know you said you were waiting for the development of the technology there, and you didn't know exactly where these lights were going to be placed. But I was just wondering, are these lights going to be something that's going to be on all night long, or is it something that's only going to go on like in solar fields that we have, only if there's an emergency, somebody has to respond to the field, and then the light goes on in nighttime and then shuts off when that person leaves? Do you have any idea how, if those lights are going to be on all the time?
With regards to lighting, there are certain standards required by the interconnection utility, which is going to be Eversource, which we're going to have a connection to. There's specific equipment at that point of interconnection that is actually under the responsibility of Eversource to manage, according to best utility practices. So that portion of the project would remain lighted according to Eversource's own standards. However, the rest of the project wouldn't necessarily be under that jurisdiction.
So how much of the project would that be?
It would be a small piece on the northwest corner, directly adjacent to the north-south power lines, just to the south of the substation.
And those lights would be on in the evening?
So those lights would be on according to whatever Eversource's requirements are. I'm not sure specifically of Eversource's requirements. What I'm trying to say is that it wouldn't be under our response. It wouldn't be under our project's requirements. It would be under the utility's best practices, which is the standard that they have to maintain for their own equipment.
They must have lights on at the substation during the night, but I'm not sure of that. Do you have any idea?
I'm not sure specifically.
Yeah, okay. But they have to have that according to their regulation. You're saying that they have to have these lights there.
I'm saying that that utilities have a regulation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what their particular requirement is at this specific location. I'm just trying to convey that the requirement that I know of is specific to the utility. It's not to us or our company. It would be whatever they require of us for the monitoring of their own equipment.
The rest of the site will be unmanned, so no lights on will be required unless maintenance needs to be performed.
Okay. That's sort of like what we have at the solar panel facilities that we have.
Let me jump in. The reason I asked that question, the main part I would like to condition the lighting and photometrics plan was out of concern for the houses on Atwood that we could see from the corner of the project site, because I'm sure that would impact their view pretty significantly every night if they're used to just looking out at, I know they have power lines in their backyard, but if it's dark there at night and now they're looking out at a bunch of lights, that would drastically change their quality of life. So was my intent behind that question, to know how the lighting would change from their perspective.
Well, generally, we're only concerned with lighting. I mean, usually it's the spill of the lightings onto other people's property. It's not what people can see far away in the distance. But if these lights are required by the utility company, I mean, it's only gonna shine on the project itself. I mean, it's not gonna shine, I mean, there's gonna be lights out there. I mean, I don't know what you can do about that. If they have to have lights, they have to have lights. But that's just gonna be part of the project. But it's only gonna be for a small portion of the project too.
Right,
But I don't know how you would, I don't know how we could change that in any way.
I'm not sure either. I don't know if you can put things on lights to direct it one way or to block it. I don't know if it's even allowable, but that was the intent and the reasoning behind that question.
I guess we could condition it, saying that there won't be any light spillage outside the area of the containers, outside the fence. I mean, that's the best you could do. They can be shaded, I would imagine, so that it would just shine down and contain the lighting within the fenced area, where they need to use it anyway. I mean, it might not even have to go out to the fence, might just have to go over whatever containers you have there with the battery storage. So we can condition that.
Again, I was just thinking of those neighbors.
No, I
They might
understand,
change, so.
I understand, no, I understand that completely. But I think in this particular case, I think we can just condition it to be within the project.
Okay.
And, like I say, generally, if it's a supermarket, or if it's a place where there's people driving, or people walking and going to stores, and then we have neighbors around the site, we want to see a photometric plan, and basically that's just for the safety of the people, like we did, we've requested at other places, just so when people are walking around, there aren't any dark spaces. But in this case, it's a little different, but we just want to make sure that that light's contained, and we can condition that to make sure.
Should that apply to all the time? So as we said, there might be lights on all the time in the substation portion, and there might be other lights on only in case of need, for maintenance or for emergency purposes. Should we shade all the lights whatsoever, or only those that are consistently on?
I think the ones that would be consistently on would be important. And, I mean, how many times are people going to be working there
I mean,
in
we
the
do
dark?
not expect to have people working there at night.
Yeah.
So that if lights are on at night, it's because something major happened, or maybe there was an intrusion at the site, or there is need for an emergency check on some equipment to shut it off, or verify that it's actually off after we remotely shut it off. So these kind of events, we do not expect that to happen, but it might happen.
Even if it does, the lighting is going to be focused on the inside our work area.
Right.
So that there's no point in lighting up an area where nobody goes. So everything would be directed towards where the potential maintenance would be and that sort of thing.
Okay. That's what I felt.
Through you, so any regular maintenance, obviously, is done during the day. This is just for emergency.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so we can make a condition for the lighting. The next was gate-mounted signs, and I read through your response that the fire and electric codes take care of these signs, NFPA and the NEC. So that's something that's already taken care of anyway, the signs, the signage. And there was another one about the maintenance workers' response time. And I don't know if that's as much of a concern as, as the response was from you people was that the fire department would be the early responder for any kind of an emergency out there, which would be for fire, or some sort of an accident for a worker or something like that, I suppose.
Let me I just want to explain my intent of the question since I didn't get to ask them in person. The intent behind that was I was just wondering, when you had said you would dispatch a person from an office, I was just wondering where that office was, so how long would it take them to get there? That was the intent behind that question.
So there'll be a series of subcontractors from national companies and local companies with local offices in different parts of the southeastern part of the state. We've not signed contracts with those specific subcontractors yet. They would be dispatched by the operator who's based in Andover, Massachusetts at Enel's headquarters. And then for whatever specific piece of equipment is having an issue, there would be an action scheme where there would be an automatic notification followed by a phone call followed by a dispatch for whichever truck is rolling, doing that function at whichever time.
Okay, thank you.
And the next question was, and I remember the some people from the surrounding area asked it, and as I've talked with some people today about the coolant used, and I guess you've got it down to two technology systems now, one that will be like air-cooled, I believe, and then one will have a some sort of a coolant that has ethylene and glycol in it, and it will be, so it'll be either one of those two systems?
The Tesla units that we're proposing, there's a door on the front. I think we've all seen the rendering before. There's a door on the front. When you open the door, there's a little air conditioning unit right there on it. And it just recirculates the water, the 50/50 water and ethylene glycol, and that's what cools the components inside.
So is that typically used in home air conditioners too?
I don't know about home.
That is the same compound used in cars. It is exactly the same water-based solution that Tesla cars use on the street. It is actually the very same tank that they put in the car to hold that liquid, and the very same radiator to cool that liquid. The components are almost taken out from a car and put in that system.
Okay. Does that have any, is it a contaminant, or, I mean, I know that cars have accidents or trucks have accidents, and they usually just put down some absorbent on the ground to absorb anything. These aren't dangerous substances.
No, it's not toxic at all. And sorry?
I don't even think it's flammable.
No, it's not. It shouldn't be. As far as I know, it's not flammable. And I mean, compared to a car who moves on the street and might hit on another car and break its system that holds that liquid, this system is stationary. I mean, nobody will hit that.
Right. Yeah.
So again, the only risk would come from a potential fire.
Yes.
That would make the liquid evaporate most likely, since it's water and there is some alcoholic basis, the ethylene and the glycol. So most of it will disappear, would be volatile with fire.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. The next was a lightning strikes. And your response to that was that there is a lightning system to be placed, I think, at each container, I guess, or each battery storage unit.
Here, let me jump in
So
there.
you're all
before-
set? Yeah.
Well, my intent with that question, I was wondering if additional structures were going to be put in. I'd referenced the Hornsdale Power Reserve in Australia because they have large structures. So I was wondering if, as part of the lightning system plan, would anything large be going up in the air? Again, wondering if it's impacting the visuals from the surrounding areas. So I wasn't asking about actual explosions, more of the visual impact.
So in response to this question, I contacted the Tesla representatives, and the whole electronic wiring scheme, it's grounded, so my understanding from talking to them is that there are no towers or, targets, if you will, to try and deter the lightning to go to ground that way. That all these systems are grounded, and that there's no towers or whatnot.
Okay.
To be complete, the only portion where there might be need for towers, for those poles against lightnings, might be in the portion of the substation that Eversource will build to connect our system, which will look exactly as the current substation. So if at that substation are there any lightning poles, might be that Eversource will require for their safety requirements to have maybe one pole in their portion. And you need to consider it, and if you look at that map, I don't recall having seen lightning poles there, and it's hard to say there. I mean, I don't see anything that casts a very long shadow among all those poles that you see. That's a telecom tower there, so it's not part of the substation. But if you look at substation, there is no long pole that casts a very long shadow there. Or longer than others, so it might even be that there is no lightning pole there. Anyway, that will be up to Eversource to determine whether they need it or not.
Okay.
Okay, then the next question was battery storage in a structure, and I think Jen said that other towns had required a structure, and I think we had already gone through this, and we do have some representatives from the fire department with us tonight if there's any questions, but I think we had already gone through this about, we have battery storage containers out there, and we were talking about there was talk about putting these all in a building, but especially the fire department thought that wouldn't be a good idea because it would just make their life more difficult. If there was a fire and you had all these structures within a building, it just wouldn't be safe for the fire department. But if there's something else.
No, my intent behind that question too, you're gonna hear me say my intent a lot, because this is why it's easier to ask in person instead of via email. Was because I think I may have been misunderstood in the past about this question. I was never asking to put the containers inside a building. It was more to put whatever the batteries themselves would be in the building instead of in individual containers. So when you said another town was going to do it, it piqued my interest. What would that look like? I know when this came up before it was even on the bylaw books, it had been said we could put these things in structures. So I think I was misunderstood suggesting that the containers be put in a structure, because that was never it. I was just curious what they could look like in one big structure instead of a bunch of containers.
It is definitely possible, and probably from an economic point of view, it might even be cost-effective sometimes to put large battery project like this under a single roof, under a building. The building, however, is visually more impactful, especially here in the northern part of the United States. We need to have a sloped roof, most likely, so it might become 18, 24 foot high, depending on the width of the building. So visually, it's more impactful, and from a fire propagation risk, the containers or enclosures, like the kind that we have proposed for this project, have an intrinsic let's say, segregation among the different units. So if a fire catches in one battery, it's very easy to contain in that module without propagating to all the others, because there will be always like 6 feet or more between the different rows of containers. So while we see building usually more cost effective, containers or enclosure might be safer and less visually impactful. So that's why we chose to propose a system with these kind of enclosures.
Yeah, but it is possible, and I didn't want you guys to think I was suggesting putting the container in a building, because obviously you don't want to send the first responders into a building to then go in another building.
Sure, yeah.
Clarifying what I may have represented.
Okay. And so the next was further battery storage sites. And I read through that response, and I remember at the first meeting I asked, about this site, and I think there was something that was particularly important about this site. It was because it was next to the power lines that go east and west, north and south, and also because of the electric power station there. And for something, I think as you explained it at that time, for something this large, it wouldn't be something that could happen any other place in Carver, or maybe not in even any other towns, because this was just an ideal situation for this to happen.
I think that you're going to see projects of this size happen regionally, several throughout the state, but certainly not more than one of this size in the town of Carver. I mean, the only other possibility for energy storage is that potentially there might be a small project co-located with one of your solar facilities, but that would be maybe one container or less. And then potentially sometime in the future, there may be residential energy storage, which would look like a refrigerator in your garage. But this is in the future, you'll see these happen regionally, not multiple in one town or in every single town.
So if a project of like 25 megawatts wanted to come to town, larger than just associated with a single solar farm, but not nearly as large as 150 megawatts, can a 25 megawatt, and that's just kind of an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
Can one of them come to town that's smaller than yours but larger than a solar?
I think it's very unlikely, because I'll talk about voltages of different lines. So there's one location in Carver that's good for a project like this, and it's at this very large transmission substation where you have 500 kV, 230 kV, and 115 kV. On the distribution system, which is where you might find other locations, you have 12 or 16 kV. A project of 25 megawatts would never fit on 12 or 16 kV. It's just too large. The maximum you would get on there, given existing load conditions, would be maybe 2 or 3 megawatts, maybe. The core reason why you won't see a lot of these is just the economics are not going to work at those small sizes. There's not a business case for it yet in the States. It's the business case really starts at these like large infrastructure investments type.
So just to the board to impress upon you, we're not saying this can't happen anywhere. It can. It's not likely, and at this time, it's not cost effective, as he said, but we just need to keep in mind moving forward, it's not that it can't happen. It is possible.
All right, the next one was additional fire equipment needed. And we've had a project, North Carver, we had a solar panel project over a landfill. And at that time, we conditioned some equipment that was needed by the fire department to site-specific. And that was just conditioned in the agreement. I think we talked about this,
That's that language we talked about earlier.
still not here. We do have somebody from the fire department here. If, maybe you want to come up and just speak about that, if you could, please.
Eric, you can.
Or you could use that microphone right there if you like, and you can sit down in a nice comfy chair.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
I think you can, if you just speak up, I think we're good, you can hear everybody anyway.
Sure. So the North Main Street project that you spoke of, basically, it's not normal for us to ask for equipment or resources other than, what would be required. That was a certain instance where our recommendations or our regulations that we typically hold projects to, they couldn't make that project fall within those constraints. So our roadway widths, things like that, widths to get trucks in and out, for emergency services, they could not meet that criteria. And so basically, the town administrator, the fire chief, and the applicant all met. And they came to an agreement that, hey, we cannot meet the requirements of the fire department. So in lieu of that, is there something we can do to, remove that burden and have this project go forward? And so there was some monetary value associated with that. Basically, that was used to purchase a smaller vehicle that would be able to get in those tight areas and things like that. This particular project, basically, we look at site access and those types of things, all of the normal criteria that we hold projects to. And if you look at our comments, this project meets all of those, so there is no burden. You're not placing that type of burden on us that we can't utilize our own equipment that we currently have. The big question a lot of times, especially with, everybody hears lithium ion and they go, oh, that's, you hear it all the time on the news about airplanes and things and all the concerns with lithium ion. The big concern is water, and I know that Ms. Bogart and other members of the planning board, we've heard it before about a tanker or a water source. One of the things that we know about this site is within 1,300 feet, if you look at that map, there's a water source on that property that's about 1,300 feet from the proposed development that holds about 5.2 million gallons of water. And so that's something that when we look at a project like this, one of the things we would ask for, that water source wasn't there, we would say, okay, we need a cistern or we need some type of, you need to help us with some water. But seeing as there's about 5.5 million gallons of water on that property that's at our disposal, that kind of mitigates that type of, that's why we really didn't pursue anything there. So again, the project kind of falls within our requirements. There was nothing there for us, and kind of in favor of moving forward.
Okay.
So when Mr. Garfield said that we could condition a fire truck or something, and he actually said he would fully expect it to, and then in the petition to the siding board, it said at the town's request they would, you're saying the town doesn't need any apparatus, mobile water, any
Right, so-
additional needs, because it seems like it would be appropriate if it was necessary, and that they were amenable to that too. So I would wanna
And
help
so
the
I can tell you
department.
that there has never been a conversation from the fire department, from us, with Mr. Garfield or anyone else about a tanker, about a mobile water source. That was something, again, early on in the project when we looked at the merits of what was being proposed. And then obviously Jesse does he does most of the comments and the site work. When we visited the site and we see that water source and we know the area pretty well, that was something that we just didn't feel, the developer's only gonna go so far. You're only gonna push them in a direction so far, and then they're either gonna say, yeah, we can do that, or no, we're gonna fold up and go home. So, and I don't even know if that's legal to require things like that. So, again, I think with the water situation the way it is there and the equipment that we have today, we decided not to do that.
Mr. Chair, if I could, that water source, let's say worst-case scenario, you did have to exhaust it. Is it a water source that can replenish itself, or would that be something that we would consider?
So that's a natural water source that is self-replenishing.
Okay, good.
And 5.2 million gallons of water, I don't know if you can think of what 5.2 million gallons looks like. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that we wouldn't exhaust it in the worst-case scenario, in the 100-year storm, in, a catastrophe.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
I would say no, my experience.
And my main intent behind that was if we could have done anything to help support the department or give the town what it needs, I wanted to make sure we did that as part of our conditions of the special permit.
And obviously, we appreciate, that. But again, we just didn't feel that was the direction we needed to go. That answer your question?
I think so. Very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go on to the next question was connection to the transmission lines. And I read the response, and it said that you kind of had moved the connection to the rear of the project, so it wouldn't be so noticeable.
That's correct. What we had in the initial set of plans, the transmission tower, which is about 50 feet, as opposed to the transmission towers for transmission and distribution. It's shorter. It was located in the southwest corner, or I'm sorry, the northwest corner, where We stopped when we did our walk, when we came out of the wetland and came north. And that's where, you know, we looked down the way and you could see the houses. We've taken that and we've shifted it to the south. And we're trying to take advantage of the trees that are on the other side of the transmission and distribution lines, the north-south running ones, to use those to shield it. So that's been changed and moved to the south.
Do you have any further comments, questions, comments? All right, the next was computer model rendering. And that's not necessarily something that the board asked for. It's not in our regulations, but I did see in your response that you said you could come up with a computer model rendering.
We can. I think typically the value in a rendering gives the board the feel for what your strip mall or your development, your retail development potentially is going to look like. This is, I think, a little bit different. I have had conversations with AECom about how they would approach this, because you're really looking at vantage or viewpoints that are significantly far away, and the topography out there isn't really flat. It undulates. So at this point in time, you know, they can do it, and it's going to be interpretive. I would know better, and as I mentioned when we were out in the field on the walk, you know, we'd be willing to go ahead and, you know, as a condition, after we get started and we've cut the trees that we need to, now we know what is there, what's not, you know, where the trees are that shield the view, and then we'll know better what it's going to look like. I realize that that doesn't help you right now, but you know, at this point in time, you know, we can do it. Takes about 4 to 6 weeks. I've talked to AECom. Weather is a part of it that they need to get. I went out and checked for snow, and you know, we obviously want to have the snow gone for when they do that. But you know, it can be done if, you know, if the town wants it.
I mean, it's this is new to me, and I know civil engineering companies just don't have the software to do this stuff, and it's not easily done. It can be expensive. I don't know. I know Jen requested it. I don't know if the other members of the board feel a need for that. We can think about that for a second. I think we'll kind of go on, because this next one is what you were talking about, which, you know, I think is important, is the screening for the residents. And as we went into the project, from Route 58, it's going to be screened by, there's a big berm there. It's got to be 15, 20 feet high, I believe, if my memory still serves me right. And then it's going to be screened also by the electrical substation in the front. And on the left side, and there's a cranberry bog, and then in the rear, it's wooded. And it's just when we were walking on the right-hand side, which is, I think, the northern side, there was a bunch of trees that were flagged for cutting, so I remember walking through there, and I was with the vice chair, and we were looking at the trees there, and we spoke to you as you brought us through, and some of those trees are still going to stand that are along the edge, from what I gathered from you, if I still remember this right. Some of the trees are still going to stand from the easement. There's maybe a little bit of trees that are going to be there. You're not going to cut everything down?
From the north-south easement on the west side.
Yeah, that runs along the easement there. That's the most...
The north side of it, all those trees will, with the exception of the last 30 feet, those trees will go.
Okay, so 30 feet of trees are still going to be there.
There'll be a 30-foot swath of trees running north and south, immediately adjacent to the north-south transmission and distribution line. and then the project will start. And that's just about the point, if I recall, where we stopped
Yep.
and had the conversation. So everything that would have been off on our left there, I think that was about 30 feet of trees, because we walked up the western fence line that was there. So that plans to stay. And, tonight when I drove by again, from Route 58, it's about 5, maybe 6 seconds, if you're doing 45 miles an hour, that you could get a glimpse of it. And, I think we'd hope that everybody's looking ahead rather than, off into the project. But, I think we're just better off going ahead, and if we get to a point where a resident has an issue, we're more than willing to address that. At this point in time, though, relative to, rendering and screening and that sort of thing, I think that we just have to look at it that, if the residents don't have a problem with it, then there's probably not a reason to have to do anything. And quite honestly, when you look at some of these vantage points, it may be more desirable to go ahead and do the plantings at the residence as opposed to trying to cover the full length of the area that's opened up, because it's easier to just shield it right there on their property. And that would also be an advantage to them, because it could potentially shield the rest of,
Right,
at least the lower portion of it.
Right.
Obviously, it's not gonna shield the
right.
top of it.
I mean, if I was a resident out there, and I wanted to be shielded from that easement and all those transmission lines, I would have planted or put a fence along that property line myself, which I have done at my house, even though I don't have transmission lines in my yard. But the other thing we talked about, how high of a fence, this is all gonna be fenced in anyway,
Chain
whole
link
facility.
fence.
And how high is that fence gonna be?
It'll probably be your standard 6, 7, 8-foot fence,
Okay,
and we haven't, I don't believe we've spec'd that out,
okay.
the height of the fence.
Now, on some of the solar projects, we've had 8-foot chain link fence. And different residents have requested different things, because we usually do reach out to anybody that does attend to the meetings, and sometimes just by us doing a site walk, we see homes, and we reach out to the people and, see if they're happy with what they're gonna see. So we've had different solutions to screening it, and, we've just had one where they had a fence and it had that it was colored. And that's all the residents wanted was some plantings. I think we talked to you, there are different types of fences where you can kind of put slats in or some sort of screening in that fence. Could that be attained in areas that,
Yeah, I
That are more
don't see
visible?
why it couldn't. I would, though, probably respond by saying, let's see if we have a problem first. If we don't, then let everything be. If we do, then, let's have a conversation with the offended party and see what works for them. I might, as a resident, I might want to see you put a few trees in my back lawn.
Yep.
Then look down the way and see a green screen. It all depends on, who's offended and, how we can, mitigate that situation.
okay.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
If we don't condition a screening plan, I think it's important we reach out to at least the neighbor on Atwood, I believe, whose house was the most visible at the end of the cul-de-sac, because I drove on Atwood to see myself, and this gentleman happened to be in his driveway when I was in the cul-de-sac. So I did get out. I asked if I could peek from his backyard, and it's wide open. I had a brief conversation with him if he knew the project was happening. He said he had not gotten anything about it. I'm assuming he's not a direct abutter. There must be some land between his and the project, because he said he'd never received any correspondence, so he didn't know. He had noticed that a bunch of the trees were tagged, because I guess he walks his dog there. When I did ask him if he would have had concerns with it, he said that he would, I forget his exact words, but yes, he would be disappointed, or I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he cared if it changed. So if we don't condition a screening plan, I know you had said reach out if someone has a problem. He's someone that I think it's very necessary to reach out to. Because I did speak with him, and he said he would be concerned, and he just was never notified. So I don't know about his neighbors, if they're concerned or not, but I'm guessing they weren't either. But I know this guy deserves to be spoken to.
A couple of things, if I may. There were two neighbors, and I can't tell you which house they were, but at the first hearing that we had, I spoke to two of the neighbors afterwards. And kind of to my surprise, they said, well, you know, I'm stuck with this ugly thing in my back lawn that I have now. Now, you know, you don't want to make anything worse for anybody. You know, I guess my point is, again, you know, when you refer to a screening plan, I don't know that a plan is necessary as much as what's the problem and who can we work with to solve that problem. You know, again, I hate to write plans for the sake of writing a plan, and then you spend the time, the effort, and the money, and it still doesn't satisfy the homeowner.
Right.
So,
Mr. Chair, can we ask council, is there a way that we can have that language, that it doesn't limit it to just a screen, but it allows for them to have options in their particular situations, if they are, you know, going to be impacted by it?
Well, one of the issues is how far do you cast that net? Because this particular person is not in a butter. They weren't within, their property is not within 300 feet of the site. So how far do you cast that net? When does it stop? It's kind of it would be a very open-ended condition. I have seen conditions that say that they're, just recently did one where a roadway was going in between two houses. The applicant within 30 days had to come up with a screening plan for these two houses. I mean, that I think is reasonable and can be done. The other thing is how do you enforce it? You know, how do you enforce whether someone, it's a very subjective standard as to if somebody is happy with the screening or not. So I don't know how you would put that in a condition. I really don't.
I think the situation we're dealing with is similar to that. I know that more than two houses are visible, but we're not talking a massive subdivision. It was a handful of homes there, and it's being discussed in potential solar bylaw changes that the screening can be reduced or changed or waived if the homeowners sign something. So it's important to reach, I don't know if this man was one of the ones you spoke to, but it's very important that that man is contacted because he is the most visually impacted. To talk to him, to
The
see.
yellow house at the end of the cul-de-sac there,
I don't remember the color. If I drove by, I could get a house number again.
right at the very end of it. Because I did the same thing. I drove through that neighborhood, and I actually went over on Craig Street and drove around as well.
Okay.
And I think that when you go down that road and go to the very end, that's really, there may be one, maybe two houses, and that's it. That,
On Atwood?
on Atwood.
Yeah, it
It's
was,
the northern one.
yeah, I didn't get his name. He has a large dog. I believe it was a German Shepherd. And he would be quite impacted. So I would ask that the applicant work with that gentleman in the same vein that solar projects have worked with them to come up with something with him.
I guess my concern is, what the attorney had said, that are we opening ourselves up to future problems by not addressing a direct abutter, but just someone that's, granted they have the view access, but they're not a direct abutter.
Well, this project is very, very unique to town. There's none like it. There is no bylaw like it now. So, as was said, these are treated on a case-by-case basis. And in this case, we are dealing with just a few people. I don't think it's unreasonable to work with these few abutters. This is,
But they're not abutters, so that's.
right, with the
Right,
residents.
right.
Yeah, I mean, if I was this man, I'd be disappointed. It would feel like I'm being faulted because my property doesn't touch the property affected, but that you'd never know that someone owned the land in between because it's wide open. You'd think it was his.
But I guess that begs the question, what does work with mean? That's an open-ended condition that's dangerous, because what does work with mean? It could mean that they give him a phone call and that's it. It could mean plans and thousands of dollars in trees. I mean, you can't just say that the applicant has to work with certain homeowners, because there's no definition of work with.
Well, we do that with solar projects. We have, and it's proposed in the bylaw to work with people to come to a signed agreement.
Right, so but that's different. They're allowing a solar project to reduce setbacks by a signature. Here, that's not in the bylaw. It's not in this bylaw. And what's the end game here? Are we looking for screening? So if we're looking for screening, there can be a condition that they have to put screening on their property. That's something that you can enforce. You can't enforce something where they have to work with someone to come up with something, because I'm sure these people are completely reasonable, but worst case scenario, they're not. How do you work with someone? It's not a condition that a planning board can impose on an applicant.
Is there a way to provide screening on their property as a condition,
Well, you can't require an applicant
if
to.
necessary?
You can't require an applicant to provide screening on a third party's property. On their own property, you could require screening on their own property. You can't require them to put screening on a property they don't own and do not have any control over. But if you could require screening on their own property. You could require screening on their property unless there's a different option, meaning they pay for landscaping on somebody else's property. But again, it's so subjective.
So the land between the proposed project and the gentleman that Jen's talking about, who owns that land in between?
It's a transmission easement. It's the easement, so it's under control of the utility, and it's mowed and it's maintained for fire protection purposes
By the utility?
by the utility, a subcontractor of the utility. So you see, it's the north-south strip just to the west, where there's a path that a truck can come down.
I hate that question. There is, yeah.
There's probably only a couple of homes. I think you said that there was just a couple of homes there. You know, what we've done was some of the solar projects is, if we couldn't screen the whole facility, then we would go to the person's house and we would talk to them, and then sometimes we'd plant a few trees. Our original thoughts, some of the solar panel projects, where we would have a landscaper come and plant some trees. The solar companies decided that, they would just go with a local landscaper, and he would kind of give an estimate of what it would cost, and then they would reimburse the person that was affected, and so that person could hire somebody to put the trees in. I mean, I would think that it would only affect the houses on the end of the cul-de-sac. I mean, I don't think that you're gonna go all the way down the street and say that it affects all those homes. So, I mean, I guess, but then the other thing is we don't know how this is gonna affect anybody until those trees do come down. So, and believe me, if you talk to Stephen about neighbors that come to his office all the time and complain about different subdivisions and different work that's happening in town, I mean, I think that people would come and they would complain if they had any complaints at all. If they had legitimate complaints. But, so you could screen it along the edge of the perimeter of the property, or you could screen it on their property. But I don't know how we could condition this if somebody had some real, actual complaints, if you just limit it to the couple of houses at the end of the cul-de-sac, and if those people had complaints, then maybe we could talk to them and do some planting on their property, if that would be acceptable. I don't know how that would work.
The only thing I can think of, and it's not as specific as perhaps others would like, would be language to the effect that the applicant shall, in good faith and with due diligence, meet with any affected residents at the end of the Atwood cul-de-sac and to take all reasonable measures in order to mitigate the visual impact of the project on their properties.
That directly abut the easement.
Yeah. That I'm sure, that language I'm sure would be satisfactory to the applicant. It doesn't answer Amy's question specifically about what is good faith and what is good, what is due diligence and how do you enforce it. But at least it would set a standard that an applicant, such as the one in this case, would be foolish to ignore.
I mean, when I look at the houses that are on the easement, they've been there for a while. I would think if the easement and all those utility poles were, bothered them, then they would have put up some sort of screening themselves. And to think that, those houses haven't done anything, so to me, it just says that it doesn't really bother them to look at the easement and the utilities out there. But I think we can condition it so that we could take a look at the houses at the end of that cul-de-sac, which wouldn't be more than a couple.
Right.
We could talk to the people out there, if that could be done, and then once everything's cut, to see if there is a visual impact that disturbs them.
We've got to do something for that gentleman, because he did say he doesn't mind or has gotten used to the transmission line, but that it would change his property and his quality of life there. And in the petition to the siting board, I know you guys know that it said, the inclusion of visual mitigation to reduce the industrial appearance and for the project to comply with the intent of the recent Carver solar bylaw with regard to visual screening. And the intent of the bylaw is to screen the projects from abutters, from public ways. This man is not a direct abutter because of the easement. But in my opinion, it's imperative to reach out to him and to have contact with him, not just make a phone call. Like, actually reach out to this guy, because once those trees are cleared, if nothing happens, this man's backyard changes greatly.
Has he been to any of these meetings?
No, he didn't. He told me he wasn't even aware it was happening
But
because he
since
didn't
you've
get
talked to him,
correspondence.
he's aware of this, and has he showed up to any of the hearings?
I'm guessing probably not, but this goes back to what I said on the Center Street project. I don't think it's reasonable to expect the residents to come to protect their property. That's part of our job, is to speak and look out on their behalf.
So just to be clear, the good faith language that Richard put up, we agree with that. I just want to make one comment is, are we talking about that yellow and brown group of houses that's just right there? So just to the south, directly in their eye line, is a 345 kV tower. It's that, it's right. This is a 345 kV tower, as is it. So on the east-west here, it's 345 kV, which is taller than anything in this entire area. So 345 comes through this east-west transmission, and then it goes at a certain point it comes in to here, but there's actually 115 and 345 that looks like it's between them and our project, which would be right here. So that should be part of the conversation, because both of these towers, which are closer to this property, are quite large already, and this is certainly larger than anything that's going to be on our site.
Yeah, just opening the wide space would change it. All I'm requesting is that we take this man and his neighbors' input into the project as far as screening goes.
All right,
Mr. Chairman?
you can't take input once you close the hearing. Once the hearing is closed, then no testimony, no input can be taken. So if you're going to do that, then I suggest that the hearing not be closed tonight, because then you wouldn't be able to take in further information.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Serkey has said, we're willing to work with the homes there. Now, you know, as Mr. Serkey also indicated, dragging this hearing out longer and longer and longer is not something that we really want to do. And in our case, where we're saying we want to work with the homeowner, you know, I'm sure that there can be some good faith language that's put in the conditions so that we can continue to work with that individual or individuals, as opposed to going ahead and trying to contact them and have meetings with them before and whatnot. So I think our preference would be to go ahead and condition the approval for a good faith, you know, agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to sound like a horrible person, but lawyers tend to be viewed that way. This good faith language has nothing. It has no backbone to it at all. Coming from someone who eventually could be the person that has to actually defend this decision, I am concerned with language such as good faith and due diligence. So good faith and due diligence could be a phone call. Good faith and due diligence could be the abutter asks for an arborvitae and they say, no, it's too expensive. Boom, that's it. We did our job. In good faith, we said no. I do not at all think that these applicants would do that. I don't. But part of your job is to, you know, look down the road. These applicants might not be here next week. They might sell this project to someone else. We might be dealing with someone else. You can't be sure of that. So, I don't think that it's fatal to have this language in there. I just want to make sure that you're all aware of the fact that this language is going to be extremely hard to enforce.
but then again, we don't even know how much of this project is really going to impact this person that's across the easement at the end of a cul-de-sac. I mean, I imagine he has a view of the electric facility there too. But other than that, I mean, but we don't know because there is 30 feet of screening between the easement. There's 30 feet of trees between the easement and where they're gonna start this project. So, I guess we're just gonna have to. I think we've said all that we can say about this. I don't know. How do you feel? I mean, would it be a bad thing? Well, if we this week between this meeting and the next, if we didn't close the public hearing tonight, but we closed at the next meeting with conditions at that meeting, and we did them all at the same time, so we could talk to these people, is it going to be a detriment to this?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I see that the town administrator has his hand raised. I believe he has something to contribute to this part of the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two things to make. One is that I think town council's counsel shared with you that outside of the abutters to the abutters that are in your purview, is that, you know, you can't really force the applicant to do things beyond what's within the confines of the existing bylaw. Whatever future bylaw gets passed, then the future people will have to follow that, but the current bylaw is what you have authority to take a look at. So expanding that is like changing the rules of the game that we try not to do and we don't allow to happen in this town, that we expect everybody to be treated the same. Now, having said that, it sounds like what I've heard from the applicant is that they want to work and come up with a solution. They've also provided an opportunity to add some additional plantings for the town and help put together a tree replication fund. What I would suggest to kind of move this forward, because you're not going to know this answer for 6 months, is that maybe they'd be willing to add a few more $1,000s to that tree replication program. And again, they would have to volunteer to do this. That could be used to provide additional screening should there be a need to in the future. And then that would give us the ability of making sure that that would happen down the road. And then we take responsibility for it, they help fund it, and everybody can move forward and you can move forward with your hearing and not try to create and spend thousands of dollars trying to craft some convoluted legal language on something that you may not have jurisdiction for anyway, and direct them to do something that you may not have the power to do. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, we'd be amenable to that solution. We would be amenable to that solution he just proposed.
All right, so we'll go on to the next. I mean, we're going to have to vote on it, I guess. But that is another solution for it. There was a question about the tree replacing program, or replanting program, sorry. And I noticed that there were a lot of trees that were flagged out there. There's going to be a bunch of trees that are going to be cut down. And so what was, I know, was there was going to be a donation for the trees that were cut down?
Yeah, that's correct. What we had done was we had talked to our surveyor and asked what they have seen done as far as mitigation for taking of trees. They advised us that about 10% of the number of trees, we went through the expense of having Beals and Thomas go out there and literally count every tree that's greater than 10 inches in caliper. They counted 545, but a lot of those are in, or a portion of those are in wetlands. So those obviously nobody's going to cut. What we did was we estimated that about 426 would be in the area that we were going to do work. I rounded that up to 500, just as a conservative way. And then I looked for and got quotes to go ahead and replace 50 trees. And the cost for that came out to about $28,000. And so that's what our tree mitigation plan was to make a contribution to the town. Again, you know, that would be, you know, trees planted where the town sees fit. And, you know, if the town wanted to go ahead and plant some of them there, they could do that. You know, we're open for discussion on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a factual question. Is that, is the replacement, the cost for the replacement of 50 trees in-kind replacement, 10 caliper?
No, you can't find 10 caliper.
So what are you starting at, 4?
No, we're starting at an inch to an inch and a half.
Okay.
Any questions by the board members?
So actually, a quick question. You said there were 2 quotes that you had received on that, correct?
Yes.
So one was, I'm just looking at the notes, so 28,750, and the other was between 31 and 34,
And
depending on the trees selected.
the second quote was a little bit different in that it gave me the cost to do 10 trees and 3 different species of trees. So that being said, it all depends on which species of tree that you want to plant. And again, since it was intended for the town, I don't know if you know, want arborvitaes and you've got something you want to shield, or whether you want to go ahead and plant them, you know, in town hall or town center or that sort of thing. So that was a different range. And actually, the lower cost is probably due to the fact that the quote that I got is a tree company on Main Street. The other one is up in Duxbury, I believe. So I tried to keep the business local.
Yeah, and just talking openly here, given the estimate that we got for replanting of that, based on what we're gonna have to cut down in the project area, and just looking visually at the impact that the house on Atwood could potentially have, we're suggesting adding another $10,000 to that tree fund to support any visual impacts that would be between houses on the, to the west side of the transmission easement to the project.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just for logistics purposes, is that this would have to be treated as a donation from the developer to the town. It could not be conditioned in your report, so it avoids the DOR regulations. How these funds are administered is when we do get donations like this, they're administered through the Selectman's office, that I'll administer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, and we'll pick and choose the trees where appropriate based upon input that we need to replace trees wherever they may be. So that's how it'll be operating going forward. And again, it would have to be a donation in there to give us the flexibility to move the funds where necessary for tree planting.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Mr. Malinowski, if they were to do that instead of working directly with the applicants, can you guarantee that that $10,000 would go to that neighborhood? If they're doing that in lieu of working with them?
So I think to be clear is the $10,000 that I just heard was what they're gonna round the number up to. It's not necessarily for that neighborhood. When I spoke earlier, I said adding a few $1,000s for the neighborhood. It would be up to us to work with the neighborhood, not them any longer. If they gave us the funds, which they were planning to do, I would then have the DPW meet with the neighbor once the trees were cut down and determine what the impact would be. And then we'd have to come back with something that's fair and reasonable. But I would take them out of it, so to your security is now it's being managed by the town. They're providing funding, we're managing it, and hopefully when the trees come down and the views are there, everybody can live happily ever after. But at least they'll be protected.
But
Yeah.
would there be a guarantee that, I do believe you said you'd give an additional $10,000 just now. Would you guarantee that money would go to these
So
residents?
for clarification, was the $10,000, when you were rounding up to the number, is that in addition to the few $1,000s that I mentioned we would need for that intersection?
It's in addition to what we've stated in our documentation thus far, is the amount, which is guidance. Just to be clear, with regards to any kind of donation, the language associated with that gift would have to be reviewed by Nell's legal department, just to maintain corporate guidelines. But yes, it would be an additional gift per having to check the language in addition.
And what, because I think as you heard from council is that they're looking at 1.5 trees, the trees may cost more, that's why they're throwing in the additional funds. So to say that we're gonna put $10,000 into the end of that road for one house, I don't know. I don't know until the trees come down and we see what the issue is. And that may be $500, it may be $20,000. I don't know until we get there. So until that happens, we'd have to take a look at that. But that would be the responsibility of our operation and maintenance department to figure out what is appropriate that's needed for there. And we certainly would encourage input from the committee before we made the final decision, but we have funding available to do that.
I would just like a guarantee that at least $10,000 would be available for those neighbors. If only 500 is used, fine, but.
So I heard we're talking one house, now I'm hearing a neighborhood, and that's what I'm just confused as to where we draw the line. And here's the thing, again, we're outside of the jurisdiction of the board now because they're not abutters to the property. They're outside of that, so it's not within the purview of the board as to how that comes. We're gonna solve the problem, but I just can't sit here and commit to a number, because I don't know.
I guess my question,
No,
just
go
want to go on
ahead.
that. The amount that was the $28,750, where does that money go to? That goes to the fund, correct?
Correct.
So this additional $10,000 they've offered would be a donation on top of that?
Right, both of them are
Okay.
donations.
Okay.
So we're at
So-
38,750.
Are those two different? Is that 38,750, or is that 28,750?
No, it's one pot of money,
Just one pot,
one pot of money.
okay.
It's not taxed.
And again, we have other places in town that need tree replacement, taking away opportunities to plant more trees and grow them out, and pick the right species. And where needed, you know, on this particular issue, and again, I'm trying to solve a problem so we can move on here, is that, you know, we would make the commitment of planting appropriate number of trees in that neighborhood, should the views require that. And we won't know what that is until we go there, so I can't commit to one tree or 26 trees or 82 trees until we know that.
I just
But
wasn't
we've
sure if
got
that
a
was,
commitment to do that.
right, I just wasn't sure if it was two different buckets or if it's the
Yeah.
same bucket. Okay, thank you.
Because we have other money coming in from other projects that'll go into the same fund. So we'll have more than the $38,000 to do trees around town where appropriate.
I would also add that it could be a little bit, it could be dangerous to commit anything to certain properties, because once those trees come down, it could be a whole other property that's impacted, not just the two. So I don't think it's a good idea to commit and guarantee a certain amount of money to certain properties.
All right. I think we've gone through that. I think it's going to take what it's going to take. I can't see that it's going to take $10,000 to screen somebody's side of their house. I was just talking to my wife about that today. She wants both sides of the house screened with trees, and I hope it isn't going to be $10,000. That's going to kill me.
Mr. Chairman, we have a brand-new fund in town that you,
And we have an additional $38,750 added to it. Mr. Chairman.
Well, maybe I'll have the town department come down to my house and see what they can do. I don't know. All right, the next, we were talking about 15 million to 22 million delivered to the town through a pilot agreement. And the response to that is that's a lot of money. That's for sure, and it's a benefit to the town. And I think the reason there was the gap there was because of the technology, and you just weren't quite sure at this time how much it
If I
was
could
going
just
to be.
jump in, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
This tax issue is also something that's in the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So to start talking about any numbers when there hasn't been any negotiation is just going to allow more false information to get out.
Okay.
We know it's an expensive project, we know it's gonna cost them a lot of money to do it, we know there's gonna be tax revenue that comes to the town. We charge the most in the state for solar projects. We're gonna continue to charge the same amount for new projects coming down the road. But, and I just wanna be very careful, we're getting into negotiations that are going to leave false impressions with people that no one knows what they're talking about now because nothing's been negotiated. So I just caution the board on getting into something that's not within the zoning bylaws of what you're here to review.
I would also caution the board from making a land use or a land impact decision on taxes, or what's coming in or what's not coming in. These are, your purview is at the four corners of the special permit and site plan. It's not, has nothing to do with how much this project will bring in.
All right, so we'll go, and the other question was the type of technology, and I think you narrowed it down to two types. I think we already discussed this when we were talking about the coolants.
I think we proposed a technological solution which is currently readily available and proven, because Tesla has installed also large scale, almost as large as this project. The one in Australia is an example of that, so that's clearly a proven technology. At the same time, we still have ahead of us a significantly long development timeline, because I mean, one step is getting this site plan, but we still have to complete our interconnection application with ISO New England and Eversource, which will have to connect, and we don't know yet how long it will take to them to build the infrastructure to connect. We still have to secure an offtake contract through the wholesale electricity market to make the project viable. So we don't expect this project to be completed before end of 2022, probably 2023. From now to then, I mean, technology is still in a phase of, I wouldn't say infancy, because it's not, because, I mean, lithium batteries have been around for 30 years, and we all have them in our phones, but every year there are improvements in their safety, in their performance, in their efficiency. So we don't know exactly whether from now to then what will be the best product you could buy for $1. And we don't even know, I mean, if you read about Tesla, I mean, we know there are all these cars around, but every day on the news there are questions about its survival as a company, because it's barely breaks even its cost. And there are even talks recently in the press that Tesla, on top of manufacturing their own battery, might buy the battery from other vendors because of their growth. So ultimately, we don't know yet whether it will be Tesla, the vendor that we select, and we don't know specifically whether it will be that specific chemistry that Tesla uses, or might be a different flavor of lithium-ion battery. What we know for sure, it will be lithium-ion battery, and what we know for sure, that will look like a set of outdoor enclosures, which might be the ones that we showed to you in our site plan, or might be similar in shape and format and visual impact, always 8 foot high, no more than that, with aisles around. But that's really what, at this moment, we can reasonably commit to deliver the project. Then, of course, if we were to choose a different solution than Tesla, this might have a slightly different fire suppression mechanism in place, a slightly different air conditioning system in place, but in terms of level of safety, of performance, of noise, it will always be between the limits that we are proposing in our solution now.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a question? You had said if you chose a different technology, it would change the fire suppression system. How so?
So in Tesla, for instance, it's the fact that it uses this liquid coolant. Basically, the liquid itself is a fire suppressant because it's really adjacent to each battery. Other battery vendors are using a solution inside the containers, fire suppressant. There are several solutions in the market. There is SF200, I now don't remember all the acronyms, but it's basically those are gaseous substances that take out all the oxygen and have a coolant effect on the batteries to keep the temperature low in order to avoid fire propagation. And these are pretty standard fire safety equipments that you have in every industrial site. And there will be also, both in the Tesla solution or other alternative solution, there will be how do you call it, a water sprinkler system outside the containers as a further method of fire mitigation and to avoid the propagation of fire.
Would it change how the fire department has to respond?
Can I answer that? As I've said a couple of times, we get to a certain point and we develop an emergency response plan. And that gets developed with the Carver Fire Department. The last time we spoke, I'd indicated that I couldn't give an exact answer on what this emergency response plan would look like. I did submit to the fire department. They've seen the things that it might include. So where we are at this point in time is there's really actually 3 different scenarios. The first one is these are, quote, outdoor batteries. These aren't in the shipping container, okay? And that's what I've been talking with the fire department about, and that's where we bring in the water and we, fog and try and, put the fire out with the fire department. Everybody stays outside. You can't go in these things. If you open the door, you get about 2 inches and then everything's right there. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that we have what looks like a shipping container with all that equipment inside. Well, now it's a little different scenario because there is an inside. And really, we don't want to be sending the fire department inside a container. So there, we would have to develop a different type of fire suppression system. Now, we haven't really discussed that in any detail because that's not what we're proposing at this time. But if we were to have a change in direction where we replace the Tesla Megapack with shipping containers, then the fire department and our fire protection engineer and myself and others, that's when we start to develop the approach towards, dealing with that fire suppression. And then the third that really doesn't apply is a building. And, we've already talked about the fact that we're not putting a building out here. So those are three different scenarios, and each one of them has a different emergency response plan that would go with it.
And as long as none of them would require a change from the fire department, if we're going along with the Tesla and we don't think, if, Mr. Germain, you don't think we need something else, but if the technology were to change, I just want to make sure that things wouldn't change on the fire department side, and then later on down the road, once the project has been conditioned, if it's passed, then the fire department would realize, oh, we wish that was conditioned.
Well,
So-
your fire department will have the ultimate authority to approve the emergency response plan. That's why we did it that way. So if you did have a container, because we did talk about, initially, the perception was that they would have to go into a container. And during one of our meetings, we discussed that, and we said, no, you can't go inside. So right there and then, the need for gas monitoring goes out the window because there is nothing to go into. If we did have a container, now we have to start thinking about if we send somebody in there, what gases are there and that sort of thing. So it's all site-specific.
Okay.
Also to clarify, if we are going for a container, it will not be accessible. It doesn't have an ale inside. It's always opening on the long side, so you open and you access the battery. So there's no way for a person to get inside, even if it's a container.
Okay.
Also, the state fire code would override any condition that this board put in, so you're good. Yeah.
And, Mr. Chair, my question then would be, it is all right for us to work with them so that our fire department can be trained at no additional cost to our town, then, right?
Yes, but in that would be, that would also be negotiated between the fire department and the applicant and perhaps the town administration.
Sure.
But this board doesn't have to.
And I know that they have also already offered that.
Yeah,
training.
we've retained a fire protection consulting firm, PhD engineers in fire protection and chemistry, who've been starting to help us along the way, and they'll be at the disposal of the fire department as they need.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, the last was a PR campaign for this thing. And I really can't, that was a question that was brought up. I can't really see that for this particular thing. It's not a campground or an attraction of any sort. It's just a utility electric storage unit. I don't think you want to keep as many people away from this as possible. So, I don't know, do you have any other questions with that?
Well, so see, that's, in person, my thought behind that was, this is a very exciting project for you. I know, Mr. Garfield, at the last meeting, I asked you if there's another one, single one in the country. You said, no, there's not a bigger one right now. This is big for you guys, and it would be big for Carver, too. So, in my opinion, I see the state news coming and doing a, story on it coming down here. Who knows, maybe even national if it's that big. So if a news station were to come down to Carver to cover the battery, maybe they could also show Carver's cranberry bogs or something else to highlight the town and be like, oh, you've never heard of Carver, this thing's going in here. Look the other stuff that's great about the town.
So
Let's-
one comment there is that there's been a lot of mention a couple times about this being the largest battery facility. So if this facility gets built, it will be in late 2022, early 2023, and by that time it will not be the world's largest battery facility, guaranteed. It will. There are multiple facilities of this size and type. at early stages of development like this around the world and around the country. So it's zero chance it'll be the biggest.
Yeah, in the United States, the largest so far, which is planned for execution, will be in south of south of the Bay Area, San Francisco, where Pacific Gas and Electric has contracted a 300 megawatt, 1,200 megawatt hour project, which has been approved by the California Public Utility Commission last week, and this will be built in 2021. This will be twice as big in terms of megawatt and 4 times as big in terms of megawatt hour. So if you think of a footprint, it will be 4 times as large as this project. But going to your point, I mean, Enel has a tradition of working very closely with the communities where we operate, where we operate our assets. And definitely I see that as an extremely positive opportunity to highlight this project, and together with the town. We really take pride of working with communities and helping out the communities. So that's definitely something that we will be willing to discuss in the future if the project goes through.
Yeah, if you guys getting PR for it, let's highlight Carver too.
Mr. Chairman, in the response that I provided to that question, the basis for that response is actually born out of Massachusetts DOT. I did siting of 10 solar projects in the Mass DOT right-of-ways, and our company went ahead and really put some time and thought into how to showcase those 10 projects. One of those projects is over here in Plymouth on exit 5. And ultimately, that really jump-started the solar work because the Secretary of Transportation wanted these things sited along the highways in the right-of-way where it could be seen. Now, in this case, you can't really see it, but I think it's a good idea when we get down the road. Right now, it's premature, but it would be a good idea to highlight this. You're not going to see these on every street corner, and we will be at the leading edge. We've said we won't be the first, and we may, we won't be the biggest, but then who knows what their permitting is going to be like. So.
All right, thank you for the ideas. Yeah, so that was the end of any questions. I'll open this up to the public. If there's anyone out there that has any questions or concerns. Seeing no one coming forward, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
So you have motion and second. Any further discussion?
Participate in this vote.
Can I just throw in one more thing? As far as the tax revenue goes, the background behind that is that one of the criteria for our special permits is the potential fiscal impact, including the tax rate. So since there was such a broad range between 15 and 22 million, because financial impact to the town is part of our decision-making, I was hoping for more clarity.
And I think it's just unclear right now until figure out what the technology is going to be, but it's going to be somewhere in that area, which is a lot of money.
But that's why I didn't think it was completely out of our purview. I don't just ask questions for the heck of it.
Well, generally, we just consider zoning issues, and the only reason sometimes I ask that question is because sometimes it's good for the public to know that there's a benefit to a project. A lot of people say, well, you're cutting down a lot of trees, not in this particular case, or you're going to increase traffic, so you do have to give some benefits to the project, although that's really not in our purview, but.
I'm just going on the criteria of a special permit.
But nevertheless, it's going to be meaningful to the town and its taxpayers.
Mr. Chairman, that goes to the detriment to the neighborhood portion of the special permit. So it's more on the detrimental side. How will a project impact current infrastructure, current taxes, things like that, is more where you see something like that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we had a motion, we had a second, we had further discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Against? And so that closes the public hearing for tonight. And at our next meeting, Stephen will come up with the decision, and we'll look at that and probably approve it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I just want to thank you people for coming here tonight. You were very thorough, you answered all our questions, and I was very pleased and happy about that. I also thank the people from the fire department for coming down tonight and answering our questions, and I think this was a very informative meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow.
Oh, do I have a...
You okay? You need a wrist massage?
All right, next is the application of RPB, it's RPBP LLC, requesting approval of a definitive subdivision plan pursuant to the Carver rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land for property located on Spring Street on Assessors Maps 32, Parcels 3, 5-E, 5-AN, 6-EN, 6-DN, 6-CN, 6-BN, and 6-A in Carver, Mass, showing 6 proposed lots associated with 10 mixed-use office storage buildings and 9 storage buildings located in the Spring Street Innovation District. Did I have a public hearing notice to read with that, or is that
Yes, sir.
sufficient?
It should be in your packet. This is the opening of the public hearing notices this evening. And Mr. Chairman, I do have some background on this particular project if when we have that opportunity. I also want to make note that Mr. David Willett is here. He's a direct abutter located on Spring Street Extension. Is that right? High Street, forgive me. He and I spoke. He did send an email. He does have some thoughts on conditions that could make this project more in line with what we see in the character of the neighborhood. Thank you very much for coming tonight, sir.
I don't see a public hearing notice in my
That's not in there?
packet.
All right, let me
Do you have one? Yeah, it could be here, but I have a pile of papers.
I didn't see one in my file, but I can give you.
It wouldn't be in any other members except for Bruce's.
Unless,
Got it right here. Isn't this what you just read?
I just read it off
Oh, you read it
the,
off.
read it off of this. It may be, okay, let me see if it's pretty much the same zoning district. Okay, and just finish it. And any persons interested in wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated. Copy of the plan is on file at the town clerk's office and may be reviewed during normal business hours. Carver Planning Board, Bruce Mackey Chair, published dates January 18th and January 25th of 2019. So good evening.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, gentlemen, before we allow them to go on, may I give a background to
Yes,
the status of the
please,
project
yes.
and where we are? This project appeared before the planning board about a year ago for a preliminary review, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It was last spring.
Last spring, yeah, give it about a year. We received the plans, we reviewed them internally, we have not yet held a TRC. I think I discussed with you earlier, typically what happens, we meet for a technical review in this room. Fuss and O'Neill, our peer review engineers, attend. It's not very productive use of time. At that moment is when they usually receive the plan sets. They then retreat back to the office, review it, and then produce a memo. We're intending to have the TRC within the next couple of weeks before our next meeting on the 26th. That's also consistent in coterminous with the timeline that the planning board typically lays out for site plans after we open a public hearing and before we reconvene at the continuance. So it's my expectation that tonight we'll hear about the merits of the project, but the staff and the peer review team have nothing to contribute at this time. We will, however, at the meeting on the 26th.
Hey, thank you, Stephen.
Yes, sir. I defer to you entirely now.
Great, thank you. For the record, Brad McKenzie, McKenzie Engineering Group, representing the applicant, RBBP LLC. Mr. Peter Opachinski is with me. Those of you might remember the project that we submitted as a preliminary subdivision plan last spring. We had a few meetings, and we did have a TRC meeting during that process to hear what issues, the comments the various town departments had on the layout. The layout really hasn't changed. The configuration of the project really hasn't changed since then. There's about 20 acres in Carver and about 23 acres in Plimpton on this side. At some point, we'll have to file a definitive plan with the Plimpton Planning Board for the last lot, Lot 6 back here. The project is in a Spring Street Innovation District. The required lot area is 60,000 square feet, 175 feet of frontage. Mr. Opachinski purchased the property from Mass DOT, I believe it was in April of 2018. October of 2018. As you read into the record, I think the assessors still may have this property comprised of numerous smaller parcels. When Mr. Opachinski and his entity bought the property in October of 2018, we did file prepare an 81X plan that we put on file at the Register of Deeds to consolidate all of those properties. So really, legally, right now, it's one site in Carver and one in Plimpton. The Conservation Commission last July, I believe, approved an order of resource area delineation confirming the wetland boundaries for the project Ricketts Pond and the BVW that extends from Ricketts Pond. The project did receive a MEPA certificate also last year, as it did trigger a MEPA threshold for land disturbance of greater than 5 acres of impervious coverage. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the site. There's a ongoing mining operation there. Mr. Opachinski came in last year and received an earth removal permit, and the operation is ongoing. The project prior to that, I think a few years back, in this area here, was cleared, but other than that, it was primarily mature woodland, of course, with the BVW to the east, and the topo, as we surveyed this last year and the year before, was undulating, and obviously the topo is much different now than what we surveyed a few years ago. The project is 6 lots. And the road is about 1,220 feet in length. The intended use at this point is light industrial. Each lot will come back before you for an individual site plan review at some point. We're really here just to permit the roadway and the subdivision infrastructure, the drainage system, utilities that support the project. The stormwater management system was designed to fully comply with the DEP stormwater management regulations. We will be filing an NOI with the Conservation Commission as a portion of this work is located within 100 feet of the BVW boundary. We did install, or proposing to install, a dry water system with hydrants at 500-foot spacing as required by the fire department. As part of the TRC process, we did get feedback from Deputy Boyle on secondary access. And we did incorporate a fire lane here from Spring Street to the rear of Lot 1, the parking area. As the subdivision, we're seeking a waiver for dead-end road. There's only one primary access into the project. I might mention the drainage system does result in retaining 100% of the flows from all the impervious coverage on the site. So the soil, as we know, is very permeable, conducive to subsurface sewage disposal systems, stormwater management systems. So we're able to retain the entire volume of stormwater, not only peak rates, but volume of stormwater on site, which is which is over and above what's required by state and local regulations. There's no public water we talked about on Spring Street, so each of these lots will have their own private well. The utilities are all underground as required by your subdivision rules and regulations. The road layout is 50 feet in width as required by your regulations, with 24 feet of pavement with 12-inch Cape Cod berms on each side. We are seeking a waiver to not install sidewalks in this industrial subdivision. And another waiver that we're seeking is, it was impractical to excavate observation pits. We knew that the applicant was going to be mining the property, and if you look at the roadway profiles that are part of the plan set, in some cases there's a 40-foot cut to the finish from existing contours as surveyed last year to the proposed roadway grade. So I think what we discussed was that once the project was down to the grade, close to the grade that is proposed under the definitive plans, that we would do some additional soil exploration to determine groundwater elevations, and that could be a condition for the permit. The last waiver is under section 735G for grade, which requires that the low points shall not be located in cut areas. And that's kind of impossible here. The entire site by nature is a cut. Plotting plan. So here's the profile. So you can see, here's where we connect to Spring Street, and coming up at a modest slope, the site just rises substantially from Spring Street back here. About elevation 200, where the cul-de-sac is, proposed grade of, say 190, about 140, 150 back here. So a great deal of material needs to be removed in order to achieve the final roadway grades for the project. So I guess with that, I'll open it up to the board for questions.
Now, Stephen, you were saying that this hasn't been looked at by our engineers yet?
The preliminary was conducted, and we do have a memo from Sam Hemingway dating back to last July, as I'm recalling. The plan doesn't seem to have changed substantively, if at all, frankly, but it was a preliminary TRC. The other department heads are in receipt of the plan set that's in front of you. I have not received comments back from them as yet.
Okay.
And I do hope and expect that we can get the TRC convened within the next week. We'll ship a couple of days to you guys to make sure that that's conforming to your schedule.
Sure.
And we will have those memos, Mr. Chairman, for the board's review before the 26th.
Okay. Okay, so this is going to have to be continued anyway.
Typically, we also schedule a site visit before such a decision is made. And having visited the site, Brad, I think you did a great job describing the topography. I don't know how much has changed since I was out there last with Brooke and Bob Francis, but a sight to behold, no doubt. You guys have a lot of work.
It changes every day.
Yeah, no doubt.
Dynamic.
All right, any questions by any board members at this time?
My only question would be, I don't believe I was on the board at the time for the original site walk, so if at some point I could take a walk, maybe possibly with Stephen if you want to or something, just to take a look at it.
Yeah,
I
think-
know
I
that you
think we're
don't
all gonna-
necessarily have to be on it.
I don't think any of us went out for a site walk
Oh, all
yet.
right.
Yeah, I don't
All
think, I don't believe so. I don't remember. a site
I
walk.
hadn't attended a site walk with the planning board members. We did do a preliminary meeting about a year ago or so, downstairs in the basement room, if you'll recall. I did a site walk with the conservation agent and the building commissioner a number of months ago. It was right around the time that you guys were closing on the property with DOT, as I'm recalling.
All right, seeing no questions from the board, further questions, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone out in the audience that has any questions or concerns? If you could just step up and use that microphone there, you can use that chair, and if you just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you for having me. My name is David Willett, and I live on 157 High Street. Just want to say I'm very happy with the way the meeting's gone tonight. I think the board's in genuinely interested in the projects that have been here tonight. I say that as a former public works director and city manager for a city in Colorado, also a registered professional engineer. So having said that, I guess my only concern is the site is really, in modern terms, is how do you integrate a light commercial area with a residential area and keeping property values in that area. You know, as you know, if you've been over there, and I heard about the site visit today, I would highly encourage the board to get out there and walk the site, because there's a huge grade difference between the entry point and what they're developing back there. Generally, I'm not opposed to the site, but, you know, I'm concerned with water quality, and I trust the Board of Health to take care of that when they come in for their site permits. I'm concerned with the stormwater management. I've seen many of these sites just get, the stormwater detention ponds just get to be mud-filled pits, and I'd like to see that controlled more and integrated with their landscape plan for the site. And have some sort of maintenance agreement that has some sort of bite and keeps that, because I think I reviewed the plan 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think the detention pond was out near the road. Those things, you know, there was a question on photometrics and lighting back, and I would certainly like to see a photometric plan and a usage of LED lights and downturn lighting and perhaps soft lighting as well. Also in noise. I mean, there's a lot of houses around there, and I thought for sure some of our neighbors would be here tonight, and you know, being at many council meetings, I know the fact that it gets frustrating as an elected official when people don't come to the town meetings and express their opinions. So, in a general sense, I guess, I'm looking for a plan that's aesthetically pleasing, even though it's light commercial, a place that has sidewalks where you can walk there. There's a overgrown sidewalk now that was left, the remnants of what the state did in the intersection there, and I think overall that could be improved a bit. I mean, we have no place to walk there, and High Street, as you know, was an extremely busy road. I've had a house there since 2003 and just recently retired back here. And I'm happy to say the traffic on High Street is a lot less since 44 opened up, but nonetheless, it's still a very dangerous street. So traffic counts and all those stuff, I trust you gentlemen have taken that into consideration, but I want the board to go take a look at the site, because there's a huge grade difference between the top of that ridge, looking down on 44, and where they're developing the site off of Spring Street. And then, so the detention, the lighting, the noise, and the traffic. I hope the board takes that into consideration.
We generally do. So we'll take a look at those things when we do a site walk and then review the plans again.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, let's entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
Make a motion to continue the hearing of RPBP LLC to
March 26th at 7 o'clock is our next regular meeting.
March 26th at 7 p.m.
I'll second.
So I have motion and a second, further discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so then now we just got to come to a site, time for a site visit.
Did we already make us 7 p.m.? So wouldn't it be 7:15?
We generally do 7 PM because it depends what was happening before. Sometimes we'd say 7:30, and that's 10 past 7. All of a sudden, you know, we were there and we had to wait. So we schedule everything for 7 o'clock.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's how we do it, yeah, so that's what we've been doing lately.
And we can always start a little later. we can't start sooner.
Got it.
All right, what time would everybody like to go for a walk? Are we gonna be going uphill?
One way, right?
So today is the 12th. Next meeting will be the 26th. So somewhere between the 12th and the 26th. When would you be, I always ask you last, Stephen. This time I'll ask you first.
I didn't think you noticed. Looking ahead, Mr. Chairman, I believe in this project. It has good merits. I can certainly be available anytime that's conducive to this board. Looking ahead to the 19th, I think we benefit from having later, the sun is up later now. We're in daylight savings. About how long do you gentlemen suppose it might take to make that walk?
Probably 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
It's a good size by the time you walk the property with the
Right.
terrain and everything.
I would say perhaps 4 o'clock would be the latest we should convene.
4 o'clock on the 19th, Tuesday the 19th. Is that good for you?
Is there any way we could do it on a Monday?
Yeah, sure.
Either the 18th or the 25th?
Can't do the Monday either, or the 18th or the 19th.
Yeah, Monday doesn't work for me. Mondays.
How about Friday? Oh, well, Friday, Stephen, is half a day.
What about the 20th? If we were gonna do 19th, but that,
I can't make it the 20th, but I imagine I could go to, I can't do the 20th and the 21st, because I am gonna be doing something else, so, but I could make an appointment and see Stephen, I suppose, and we could take a quick walk up there. If it's better for you people to go, that would be fine with me.
Mr. Chairman and members, looking ahead to the weather, looks like Friday this week will be 57 but rainy, and Thursday will be right around 51, partly cloudy. Monday, I guess we're getting snow again, and the rest of the week looks uncertain. Thursday this week, or even Friday, if the rain holds off in the morning, I could certainly do it.
Thursday of this week would be okay with me after, oh, it'd have to be afternoon time. Would that work for you? Could you do a Thursday?
it's a half day of school and parent-teacher
Oh, okay.
conferences.
This week's gonna be tough for me.
Okay.
Wednesday next week looks like, you said the 20th doesn't work for you, Mr. Chairman?
It won't work for me.
Thursday, the 21st is partly sunny, 45. That's the forecast.
In the afternoon, I may be able to do it. Thursday, the
Talking about 4
21st.
o'clock, right?
I just would recommend we don't convene any later than 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Given how long it'll take to be out there.
Well, we are in daylight savings time now.
Right, I think the sun's setting a little closer to 6.
Yeah.
7 now, ooh, that's exciting. I hadn't even noticed. I've been in this room, the sun rose and set, and I haven't even seen it.
It was so nice when we started our meeting, and it stayed nice for a while time.
Yeah. All right, Thursday. Does that work with everybody?
Yes.
21st?
21st at 4.
Yeah, they
Sure.
worst.
I'm not good with that, but go right ahead. I can always schedule another time.
Okay. That works with you, Jen?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay, so 4 o'clock site visit, okay. And where do we meet?
We have a paved entrance to the site for hauling materials off the site. We can meet, and I have an office trailer there. We can meet right in that office trailer.
Okay, so
What would
that's.
that address be?
Yeah.
I think it's 32 Spring Street.
Okay.
And I'll of course attempt to arrive earlier, so everyone can see my bright red car.
Bright red. That always
I
helps.
can pick you up in my bright red truck.
I would like that. You know how long it's been since someone picked me up?
All right, okay, so we have entertaining a motion for a site visit at 4 o'clock, March 21st. at 32 Spring Street.
All right, I'll make the motion to have a site visit at 32 Spring Street on Thursday, March 21st at 4 PM.
Okay, so you have a second.
I'll second it.
There's motion and second. Those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Is that, does that work with you? 4 o'clock Thursday, next Thursday? Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a Mylar here for the Form A.
Yeah, you can
I
hang on
just-
to it. We'll have them signed at the end, and you can pick it up tomorrow.
Perfect. Do you have a pen? Because I did not bring a,
Do I have a pen?
perfect.
All right, we're going to other business, planning board member notes. Anybody have anything they would like to say this evening?
Just have one quick thing that, once again, we're running the Kane Strong Golf Outing. It's gonna be May 18th at the Bay Point Country Club, and anyone would like to donate raffle prizes, door prizes, or golf, they're more than welcome to contact me.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll go on to our planning director.
We have no further notes or commentary for this evening.
All right. We have 3 sets of minutes, January 8th, 22nd, and 26th. Does anybody, the minutes are piling up here.
Jen, I think you
Yeah.
had some edits to make, or you wanted to read them over. I think that's why we tabled them.
Yeah, no, last time I had mentioned a bunch, and I'm seeing them still in here, the ones that, as I'm going through quickly, on page 5, I see Cornelius Shea's name is spelled wrong, and there's still a blank for
Yeah.
Mr. Blank asked.
They weren't voted on, so it wasn't changed yet.
Yeah.
So as soon as they're voted on, I'll change them.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I don't remember what the
Oh,
edits
I can
were,
pull up
so,
the past.
no, I trust that you made them. I'm just seeing blanks, so.
So this is January 8th?
Yeah.
January
This-
8th,
this
okay, all right. Yeah, I must have, no.
Yeah, like page 9, 361A, if that's the 61A.
Okay. Those are the ones we had already gone over before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I trust you got it, we just don't have those reflected in front of us.
All right, entertain a motion to accept the minutes of January 8th.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of January 8th for the corrections that Jen had
As amended.
as amended.
It's amended, okay.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, those in favor?
Aye.
All right, January 22nd.
Okay, question on that. In attendees, it lists James Hoffman and Kevin Robinson, but then it says Kevin Robinson at the end of that, and then absent, it says James Hoffman. So either you guys were here a bunch, or you weren't. I'm
I think I was here in spirit.
trying to figure, oh, and it says meeting room 41 at the top. We're not in 41. So the top of the minute says 41, when it should just be 1. And then the Jim and Kevin situation is a little wonky.
January 22nd.
Yeah.
January 22nd, yeah.
It says, I'm looking at it right here, it says meeting room 4.
Oh, the one I have says 41. Maybe it's been changed.
Maybe it's been corrected.
So the one you see in attendees, does it say Bruce Mackey Chair, James Hoffman, ... Kevin Robinson?
James Hoffman, was remote.
And I think you just needed to cross my name off the second time at the end.
I'm not sure. I'm not seeing that. I don't think I'm seeing what you're seeing.
Here, you want me to come show you?
That would probably be helpful,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, see, this is what I'm looking at.
Seems to be happening, it seemed to happen twice.
So weird, 'cause this is, I mean.
Yeah, yours is, yeah, yours is right, that one's all wonky.
Okay, cool.
So that's already been corrected?
It was
Everything-
never like that, I don't.
Oh,
something
okay.
happened.
Hers doesn't look like this one does, guys.
It looks correct.
The
Okay,
stuff I
what's
just
on the
said,
on the
yeah.
computer. Okay, okay, I'll entertain a motion to,
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes on January 22nd.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have February 26th.
I haven't had a chance to read these yet because we just got them tonight, so I'm gonna ask to have them tabled.
Okay, so we'll table February 26th until our next meeting.
Can I run over to you to look at these minutes? Because I'm getting the same weird Kevin Jim things.
Okay, so our next meeting will be March 26th at 7 o'clock. And entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll entertain him, I will, no, why keep doing that? I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. And thank you, everyone.